Thank you very much. Ms. Lorbosch, let me ask you a very hypothetical question. Let's suppose that we lived in a world in which a significant number of the members of Congress did not feel there was political advantage in building on old stereotypes of welfare Cadillacs, of members of our society devoting their days to using taxpayer money at liquor stores and strip clubs, of numbers of Americans who desired to just live on the dole instead of to work, and that instead of building on those stereotypes, there was a genuine, broad-based, bipartisan interest in Congress to lift people out of poverty. And let us suppose we lived in a hypothetical world where an administration was not afraid of being stereotyped itself and provided some bold leadership with the TANF law coming up for reauthorization to make recommendations about how we might lift people out of poverty, and that this law and its reauthorization could play at least a limited measure in doing that. What would you see in that hypothetical world as the key elements that we need to have in a law focused on lifting people out of poverty, reducing the underclass in this society?
Thank you. That's a big question, and obviously, TANF by itself is not going to lift everyone out of poverty, and clearly the other programs that Dr. Bashar mentioned are very important, the minimum wage, people, the labor market as a whole. So obviously, TANF is only going to be a piece. Within TANF, I do think it is engaging people in work activities to the extent that they're able. I do think it's recognizing that some people are going to need to take a more indirect path, that, if people are in the middle of being homeless, if their kids are, about to go into foster care, that they need to focus on getting housing or resolving the problems that are in crisis. If they do have mental health or substance abuse issues, they might get a job, but they're going to get fired from it but if they're really in trouble, so they need to resolve those issues and then move to work. I think at a federal level, I do think providing flexibility to states in return for real accountability on their accomplishments. As I said, I think funding subsidized employment, because that's clearly, when the private sector jobs are not available, a great way to give people real work experience, real connections to the work, and it also helps the employers. We know a lot of small businesses benefited from that during the recession.
Some of the testimony has indicated that the job training and educational opportunities really don't accomplish very much. And it does appear that some of these job training programs have not been very successful. What's your assessment of the role in any reform we have of the outcomes we should require concerning education and job training programs?
Right. So let me start with the jobs evaluation, which is the study that did drive a lot of this belief that education doesn't work. And those programs clearly were not very effective. People were in very low intensity programs. They didn't get anywhere. We know now that you need to have credentials that have value in the labor market. It needs to be much more connected to what employers say they need and not just more classroom based. We have learned a lot in the past 20 years. The economy has also frankly changed. The unemployment rate for people without a high school degree is twice what it is for anyone else. And employers are increasingly unwilling to just hire the folks like your dad who've got a great attitude but don't have any of the skills. They want people ready to show up and do the job on the first day. And so we need to give people access to that training.
We've already let one program, the supplemental grants under TANF, expire. That was a benefit in Texas in a total of 17 states. What is the effect of losing that supplemental program, and how should it be a factor in looking at further revisions or reauthorization of TANF?
Right, so overall, the value of the TANF block grant has been fixed in nominal dollars since it was created in 1996, so it's lost about 30% of its value. In the 17 states that got supplemental grants, obviously the cut has been even greater. As we know, states do a lot of different things with their TANF block grants, so in some cases it's hard to pin specific things, but we know in recent years states have been cutting actually their welfare to work contracts in many cases, providing less services. In many cases, childcare has gotten cut back, which means that in some states, people are back to this crazy catch-22 where you have to go on welfare in order to get a child care subsidy because the waiting list for child care for the working poor is so long. All these things happen when the funding gets squeezed over time.
Thank you, and to all the witnesses, Mr. Chairman.